Hello class, it's Professor Streeter, and in this video we're going to look at the books for the course and how to access them from the D2L shell. For those of you who have opted in to the book bundle program through our college bookstore, you should automatically have access to your digital materials for this course on the D2L website, and I'll show you how to access them right now. If you have opted out, then you will have to acquire the books on your own. So please reach out to me if you've opted out of the book bundle program and you don't have your books or you don't know how to acquire your books. Please reach out to me with an email or set up an office hour on Calendly so that we can talk about the book situation. I raised questions about the books in the student survey, the online Google form that I sent you. So you can answer those questions on the Google form and share comments about the books there. You can email me, but we need to make sure we talk if you don't already have access to the books. Okay, so let me show you, for those of you who do have access or have opted into the book bundle program, let me show you what that looks like. So here is the D2L shell for our course. And if you notice, there's a menu of tabs at the top, and if you go over to the right, you can see My Materials. If you click My Materials, it will take you to this page. Your page will look like this from the Prairie State College bookstore, and it will show you it will list all of the books that have been ordered for the courses you're enrolled in, and then it will show you how to view them. So I'm going to scroll down here. I teach more than one course, but here for my section of INFX, that's our ethics course, there's 2 books, and they complement each other. The Fundamentals of Ethics, if you go down here, I think it should look like this for you. If the formatting might be a little different on your page since you're a student and I'm faculty, but I think it should look the same. If you scroll down to the course, you'll see a list of the books here, and then the ISBN number. It's required. It's been adopted, but you can click View over here. And I'm going to open my copy, my desk copy down here. You can see on the lower left of the screen. Here, I'll scroll down. I'm going to click Open Desk Copy. And this is the copy of The Fundamentals of Ethics by Russ Shafer Landau. He is the author of this book. Cortex is the company that provides digital access to the books. And here you see it's published by Oxford University Press. It's an ebook. It's enhanced. It means it has various digital online content available to you outside of the readings themselves. So it's called The Fundamentals of Ethics, and it's one of our 2 required books. If you go up here to the left-hand menu, you can see the table of contents. That's the cover page. You can read all of the bibliographic material about this book on the copyright page. This edition was published in 2024. This is the 6th edition. And the author is Russ Shafer Landau. He shares with you a preface. A preface is just what it sounds like. Before the book starts, he tells you what it is. So he tells you a little bit about what's new to the 6th edition. You also can learn something about the author. Russ Shafer Landau teaches at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. It's one of the main campuses for the University of Wisconsin system. He tells you a little bit briefly about how the book is divided and what's been added to it on the preface page. For the first week, we're going to be reading the introduction. So if you click that tab in the table of contents, it takes you to the first page of the book. If you scroll down, or if you look down at the bottom of the page in the lower right-hand corner, it gives you the page number and the location. Now, interestingly, so the introduction begins here on page 1. The lay of the land is the first text where Shafer Landau is actually introducing you to our topic, the fundamentals of ethics. And if you notice, the page number then becomes H1 to 3. I believe the H stands for the heading. So when you're tracking page numbers in this digital book, I believe it's easiest to just go by the headings. So H1 through 3 takes you from the lay of the land to the next section, doubts about ethics. Doubts about ethics goes, well, that's H2 through 5. But notice if you click these parts of the introduction, it takes you to different pages, which you can reference at the bottom. So when you're writing about the book, you can use those numbers, H2 through 5, to reference where you are in the introduction. Okay, it's a little different, obviously, than having a print book where it's clear what the page numbers are. You can also move the page numbers down here. There's a tab at the lower right, so you can move from one section to another. So doubts about ethics, and moves to the next section, ethical starting points, what is morality. So this is all part of the introduction. Just familiarize yourself with the digital text. If you haven't read digital text before, make sure you know where you are in the text. So for the first week, we'll be reading the introduction to Schaefer-Landau's The Fundamentals of Ethics. And we're going to be focusing, moving into the second week, the first and second weeks, the first 4 weeks really of the semester, on the first part of the introduction, but also the first part of the Fundamentals of Ethics, the good life. So if you notice, the good life is divided into 4 chapters. And we're going to spend quite a bit of time looking at those 4 chapters in the section titled The Good Life. You can track the schedule of readings in the D2L shell, and in another video, I'll show you that. But here we're just looking at the books. Now notice, part 1 of the Fundamentals of Ethics is titled The Good Life. And this is where Schaefer-Landau is going to introduce you to some basic themes of what's involved in seeking the good life and what's involved in describing what the good life consists in. And there's different theories that people have defended on that question, right? So hedonism is a theory of the good life that focuses on pleasure, right? Pleasure is the highest good. Pleasure is what makes life good. That's a basic idea that he considers in chapter 1. And then he considers problems with that theory in chapter 2, and then looks at other ways of understanding what the good life consists in. Okay, so that's kind of a brief preview, but it shows you the structure of the book. Start familiarizing yourself by looking at the table of contents with the different chapters and themes. So once we kind of clarify what we mean by the good life, then we're going to move on to questions about the nature of morality itself. So that's called, that's in the part 2, the normative ethics, doing the right thing. And so we'll look at the relationship between morality and religion, for example. Okay, so begin to familiarize yourself with the table of contents. We're actually going to spend some time also on part 3, the meta-ethics, like what is morality? What are we even talking about when we talk about morality? And so early in the semester, actually, we'll look at chapter 9. We'll jump ahead to chapter 19 and think about what's called ethical relativism. Okay, notice, let me take this as an example. In chapter 19, at the end of the chapter, so you can see it begins here on page H164, that's chapter 19. And the first section of chapter 19 raises doubts about what he calls objective morality. But if you go to the very end of the chapter, 19.5, H168, he draws a conclusion, okay? And then right after the conclusion, the publisher has provided you with discussion questions. These are whatever chapter you're reading, starting with the introduction. Make sure you look at the discussion questions at the end, and if you have trouble answering them, go back and read more, right? Go back and reread the chapter. Because by the end of a close reading of any of the chapters, you should have a sense of, at least of how to begin to answer some of the questions. You should have something to say about the questions. hopefully you also have some questions of your own, like I don't understand this, or I'm not sure what this question is asking. But that at least is a way of engaging with the discussion questions. Okay, so that's a clue for sort of how to read, right? Use the discussion questions as a way of gauging how much you understood in the reading. It's always it's okay if there's aspects of it that you're not sure about. That's what the weekly discussions are for, and over time we'll communicate together about what we're reading, and hopefully by the end of the semester you're in a position to say that I understand the readings more at the end of the semester than I did at the beginning of the semester. That's the goal. But the only way to gauge your progress is by looking at these questions and trying to answer them yourself. There's also some quizzes at the end of each chapter, okay? I'm not going to access them right now, and these are not quizzes that I'm going to assign for credit, but you can use this material, the quizzes, the flashcards, again, as a way of gauging your understanding of what you're reading. Okay? So that's the fundamentals of ethics. And if you notice, going back to the first part of the book, so after the introduction, which we'll look at for week 1, we'll look at chapters 1 and 2 in part 1, the good life. Okay? Again, the focus is on the good life. All right, now I'm going to move to thinking about the second book and the relationship between the two books. So the Fundamentals of Ethics is written by Schaefer-Landau, introducing you to some basic themes in the history of moral philosophy, okay? And giving his narrative or his analysis of what the problems in ethics look like and what's interesting about them, and inviting you along this journey of trying to grapple with some of these questions. That's what the Fundamentals of Ethics does. The second book I've ordered is edited by Russ Schaefer-Landau. It's not written by him, and it is an anthology, a collection of readings by other philosophers on the kinds of themes that come up in the Fundamentals of Ethics. So if we click this book, you should have access to this book as well. And notice, again, there's a table of contents. You can look at the cover page and the title page and the copyright page. So this one was also updated in 2024. And again, the preface, Schaefer-Landau, the editor, tells you a little bit about how this book was put together and what's new in the 6th edition. And there's a note on the companion volume. And here he's pointing out the relationship between this book and the Fundamentals of Ethics. They are companions. Okay, so the readings in the ethical life will help fill in some of the gaps of what he's talking about in the Fundamentals of Ethics, because they cover similar themes. Or another way of putting it, the Fundamentals of Ethics gives you a kind of analysis of what's going on in the readings in the ethical life. Okay, so it's important that you read them together. So to give an example of what I mean, the part 1 of the ethical life has the same title as part 1 of the Fundamentals of Ethics, the good life. Okay, so what do we have here in part 1 of the ethical life? Again, this is edited by Schaefer-Landau. The theme is the same. We're thinking about questions related to what it means to live a good life. But instead of Schaefer-Landau's thoughts about that, we have different authors. So the first chapter is by someone named John Stuart Mill. And if you notice, the very first thing you see in the text is in a box is a description of what this is. The title is Hedonism. Hedonism has to do with pleasure. So again, the idea is that the good that we're seeking in life is pleasure. But Mill, John Stuart Mill, is writing about this idea, but he wrote in the 1800s. So we have a little description of who Mill is, his dates, and what he wrote, and telling you a little bit about the author of this chapter, Hedonism. And so Mill, in this chapter, develops his idea of hedonism. If you go back to Schaefer-Landau's The Fundamentals of Ethics, he talks about Mill, right? When he talks about hedonism, he makes reference to Mill. And so think about that. When you're reading Mill, for example, go and look at what Schaefer-Landau says about Mill, and then see if you agree with Schaefer-Landau, or maybe you have a different reading of what Mill is trying to say. Okay, the Schaefer-Landau will help you understand what Mill is talking about, but also will help you develop your own point of view, which is really the goal of this course. So Mill has some things to say about the good life. At the end of the chapter on Mill, again, there are some questions. Make sure you understand at least what the question is asking, or have a sense of how to begin answering the question before moving on. If you don't know what to say about any of these questions, go back and read Mill some more. Chapter 2, this is all for the second week. And in week 2, we'll look at some of these chapters from The Good Life. Okay, Mill's ideas about hedonism. Chapter 2 is by a guy named Robert Nozick, who wrote this in 1974. Okay, not in the 1800s, but in 1974. And you learn a little bit about who Robert Nozick is here. And he introduces this idea of the experience machine. And we'll talk about that starting in the first week, the first couple weeks. We'll look at the experience machine. We'll look at Mill on hedonism. In the second week, we'll start looking at Chris Heathwood's essay, Faring Well and Getting What You Want. My point is, there are 4 different readings, one by Mill, one by Nozick, one by Heathwood, 5, excuse me, one by someone named Brad Hooker, The Elements of Well-Being, and then a piece by Susan Wolf, Happiness and Meaning. All of these readings by different writers are in the part of the book called The Good Life, The Ethical Life, Part 1, The Good Life. And so that's the theme for us in the beginning of the semester. We're going to look at what Schaefer-Landau says about the good life in the Fundamentals of Ethics, and we're going to look at what some of these other writers have said about the good life, and develop an idea of our own, have a conversation. There'll be things you can write about what you're reading, and opportunities to express your thoughts orally during our weekly classes. Okay, but I'm just right now trying to focus on the books themselves and how to read them, how to access them. I hope that was useful. If you have any questions about the books, please reach out to me and we will certainly talk more about them together. I will share specific passages of the books in future videos and during our weekly meetings. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks.